How are you? How's LA? How's your new year going?
I'm doing very well. I'm excited. I love LA. I am just about to finish my next record, and I'm extremely excited about that too. So
Amazing.
there's already a sort of momentum to the year that I'm really happy with.
Incredible. I mean, I was trying to think, and the last time that I saw you briefly was your record release show.
Oh wow.
And I took some pictures of you that I still need to develop, which is kind of fun because there's so much space between.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And then since then, just a lot of big, I think, shared life experiences
Yeah.
that I'm excited to get into. Had a very emotional weekend. With
This weekend.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and what was so nice is that I basically just like immersed myself into your world, and
Yeah.
I highly recommend it. It feels kind of like when you go to a museum and you get the guided tour. It
Yeah.
provides better context, I think.
Yeah.
And so I'm sure that we'll get into some of the things that I watched and listened to and stuff. But I think maybe a good starting point is I want to talk about dreams and
Yeah.
dream worlds. Um, I love dreams. I have had many dreams that have felt very healing at times, and a few prophetic dreams that I think have really put temporality into question.
Yes.
Um, and so, as it goes, it was a couple of days before I was reading about your visitation dream with
Yeah.
Valentino. And I was going to bed one night and I was just wanting to feel, I think, passion or just kind of like a zest for life. I was feeling a little flatlined or something.
Yeah.
And I awoke the next morning from a dream about a soulmate. It was like I woke up like basking in this glow of what felt like total love, like union. And I had
Wow.
a sketchbook at my bedside, and I immediately am writing poems, which is not a way I usually express. Wrote, like, made an animation about a poem, and I was so aware that this moment was going to be fleeting and was writing about, how can you describe something that can't be said and wanting to just capture that experience
Yeah.
and that memory. And so then I'm reading about your dream about Rudolph Valentino, who I knew nothing about. And so I want to hear about it, but I also love that you had commissioned an illustration of the dream so that you could hold that memory, I think. Um,
Yeah.
and what I love about these sort of transcendent mystical experiences is that we don't necessarily need the validation, but it's so fun when you hear someone's sort of similar experience.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I don't know. I think I want to start there, and I want to hear about your experience. And was Rudolph Valentino someone that you, I don't know, were inspired by or knew much about prior?
Um, Not much. I love starting at dreams because dreams are kind of foundational to my music, just in general. So many of my songs come from dreams, but this one in particular, I had just moved into this current apartment that I'm in 2020, and I love Los Angeles, and I love the 20s and that this was built in the 20s. Um, I love Art Deco, all of that, and old cinema. I think I was just really starting to get into um, silent film and early sound film and early uh, just Hollywood in general, and really feeling a kinship with those people, but not necessarily Rudolph. Of course, when you get into that world, you hear about Rudolph because he is so foundational to it. But one night, I woke up at 3 and I had had this dream, and I needed to write it all down in sort of long form poem.
Yeah.
uh, and it all just poured out. and the synchronicities started lining up. It was a couple days before the anniversary of his death. Um, and he was asking me to take him to Hollyhock. Just the fact that he was speaking to me was so fascinating because there's no recording of his voice. He was one of the most famous silent film. There's one recording of his voice and he's singing opera, which is not something that he was even known for at all. So it's no indication of what his speaking voice was. So to have heard it and to have had this intimate moment with him up in Hollyhock, which is another place that I completely adore, was so special. We projected his films onto that really amazing sort of mantelpiece wall. Have you ever been in that house?
No, but it's up in Barnstall. Is that?
Exactly, exactly. You can
No,
visit
that's not
the
my house.
entirety of it, and it's sort of perfect. And we just talked about what it was like to be dead for 100 years, which is not such a long time. And I think another aspect of this, or at least we didn't talk about it, because I think at that point, that was one of the earlier dreams of this brand that I'm about to talk about. So I didn't push anything. I just kind of let him guide what we wanted to talk about. But he was also sort of secretly gay. He was only ever married twice to two confirmed lesbians. These were just marriages of convenience. I mean, of course, there was probably love and affection between them, but it wasn't a sexual thing necessarily. And I've just like 2 weeks ago or something, there was another visitation I dreamed that I had that was really strong. I was walking down a hallway and there was a man in sort of 19th century military garb with a cape, like high military, royal military, and he would not look at me, and he followed me all the way down the hall, kind of spying on me, just all peripheral view stuff. And we got to the end of the hall, and there was a door, and a very sweet man in a white t-shirt propositioned me, asked me to come into his apartment in sort of a flirting way. And I thought about it, and I I was being coy, and I look back, and this man who's been following me the entirety of the dream down the hallway is furious and completely decks the guy in the white t-shirt and just knocks him out. And I woke up, no idea why he did this. And then I look into it, and the name he had never told me his name. Someone in the dream told me his name, and this person was American, not Russian. So they said uh, Sergey. His name was Sergey, so I typed that. I suppose that's pronounced Sergey in Russian, but long story short, I discovered that this man was a nobility, a Russian nobility, who was again secretly gay, and he was notorious for this, but he was also extremely right wing and sort of evil. And he was killed in a car bombing, or a not a car, but a carriage bombing. And yeah, I don't. So what I'm getting to here is I think that I exist in a generation where I'm an artist and I can be openly gay in this way that even like in Elton John still had to sing duets with women. Not that there's nothing fun about singing duets with women, but didn't really ever sing one with a man, a love duet. Do you know what I mean? Like I can openly write my songs about having a happy gay life. And I think being the beginning, I mean, I got married a year after it was made constitutionally legal. That's, although when you're in the moment of it, even then it seems impressive. But zooming out historically, which is something that I do kind of in all of my life, I like to see everything from a greater historical perspective. That's going to mean something to dead people who never got to live their lives. I think that I will be visited throughout my life, and that it's kind of my job to commune with people who did not get to live their lives. Now, Rudolph was sweet about it. I think he just wanted to speak with me and be with me. Sergey was not sweet about it. There was so much pent up anger, and I think I'm gonna have to deal with all a whole range of emotions from men who did not get to live their lives the way that they
that
and living so openly. What do you say? Sorry.
you say that weren't liberated, and in a way that you're able to
Yeah.
sort of help liberate them by even having these conversations, and then the way that they're being manifested again
Yeah.
through your work, which is
Yeah.
incredible.
So
Um,
I'm of course writing a song about Sergei too, but yeah, that
are
dream.
you at a point now that it's like when these things happen, it's just kind of like, yeah, I mean, I'm sure it's fascinating to
Yeah,
read about Sergey and be like, he was a real person, but it is kind of this like, yeah, this
there
is
you go. It's more of a like I told you so to myself or to the I don't know, just the realm.
yeah.
Yeah. Do you feel similarly about having things validated?
Yeah, I think that been on this whatever journey for several years now of having, awakenings and all of the synchronicities and stuff that feel more real than most of everyday waking life.
Yeah.
And obviously, I think as artists, we're just kind of naturally in that sort of liminal in between state constantly,
Yes.
observing and, being the witness, observing, making something of it, which is very meditative, I think. And so you're just kind of open, you
Yeah.
know?
Liminality is also very important to me. I have these songs that I write that I don't even necessarily intend to put out that are just, I mean, at some point maybe I'll have enough just for a fully liminal collection, but like how much I dose the liminality, because there's always some in a song of mine. I like to be in between and to go somewhere that you can't typically go. I think that's why music, at least the music that I like, is so fascinating because you can immediately be transported somewhere. Um, yeah, but dosing liminality is something that I'm kind of playing with right now. How much can I put into a song and still have it be relatable and fun, but still take the people there? Um, yeah, and then other times I don't constrain myself and I just write completely liminal poems and sounds, and I love those ones too, but they don't always make sense on a record.
I feel like I want to talk about our dads and
Yeah,
and I want to get more into your record and stuff. And I think it'll flow more easily. But it's something that it was a very emotional weekend. Just 'cause I was kind of anticipating this conversation. Um,
hmm
and I listened to, we'll talk about a couple of the songs on the record. Um, but I'll start by saying that I remember when my dad passed, you wrote to me and your words were, "It is such a deep pain,"
yeah,
which I think so simply articulates what it is. And retrospectively, I was thinking about people that I had shared when my dad had a diagnosis. The ones who I told who had lost a parent, especially to illness, it was almost as if there was like fewer words, you know,
yeah,
sort of this unspoken understanding. Um, and the way I could describe it too, and what I love about being able to have these conversations is it feels like this club that you're initiated into that you don't want to be a part of, but
yeah.
you're so glad that it exists.
Yes, yes, yes.
And so, yeah, I just kind of want to open that up and share our experiences because I didn't recognize that you had lost your father until you wrote me that message. Yeah, and then later listening to the songs and everything, it's been, yeah, just very, very cathartic and moving. Um, so I'm curious about when your father passed, because it seemed like it was semi-recent as well.
Yes, he passed away on December 4th of 2020. Um, so he became ill. I think I learned of his illness at a show or right after a show that he attended. Um, and he was extremely sick and dying while I was making the first record. And we paused, and I went home and spent time with him, and wrote more things that weren't necessarily going to be on the record, but then ended up on the record, namely a song called Pierre Jean that bears his name, which I kind of perceive as a portrait of him, and a song called Morpheus about watching him die, essentially, or hearing him die, and the whole process. Because I don't know if you were with your father, uh,
And
as
those, what you mentioned was what I was curious about because yeah, Pierre Jean has this like beautiful, like it's a vibrant song. And to me, I'm like, oh, I feel like you're capturing his essence. And then there's also beautiful lines like what is the one about I see you and everything? Or
yeah, yeah,
and Morpheus, I didn't realize there was going to be a second tribute to him. And I'm so then I like the first time I listened to Pierre Jean, I wept. And then I
yeah,
listened to it a second time with a smile because I
yeah,
was thinking about imagining his personality that I think comes through. And then when I got to Morpheus, I did kind of this like classic listening party of your record with like headphones on, listen to it, all 37 minutes in its entirety. And when I got to Morpheus, I was like, oh, that's what this is about. And
yeah,
to me, that song was kind of, there was sort of like a montage of my experience playing out
yeah,
as I was listening to it, of being at their side, at his side
yeah,
as he's going. And it's this, words can't describe it. I mean, your song beautifully offers that feeling, I think. There was a lot of
yeah,
evidence, but even when you're experiencing it, I talked to my sister about it. It's almost like I don't know if we can fully grasp it in the moment. And then
no,
there's been kind of these flashbacks that I'm grateful for in the sense that I sort of use it as this touchstone when life, I dip in and out of like, what's the point? What's the meaning? And there was so much meaning when you're with someone as they're dying,
yeah.
without question.
That process almost in the moment didn't even feel sad. Like when you're taking care of them, it's. I mean, I don't know what state your father was in, but mine was like there. I mean, he was of course diminished, but he was fun and silly, and it felt good to do things for him. It felt good to go and buy him vermouth if he wanted vermouth, and buy him one from Trader Joe's and one from Target, and see if he could guess which was which, and he absolutely could immediately. Just like coming up with games, and all sitting around him and talking with him. You can almost kind of forget the inevitability. I mean, I suppose it's always an inevitability that we will all die, but there's more imminent. Um, you can kind of relinquish that and just take care of the task at hand, because there are a lot of tasks to administer this medicine, and wake them up for this and that. Um, and then and then when they're actually gone, that's when the bottom just completely drops out, and now there's nothing left to do, at all. And that's where it became really hard for me. It felt, it was joyous to take care of him in the end.
Yeah, it kind of is like all the rules go out the window, and it's a way in which we should be living life.
Yeah. Yeah.
A bit of a different experience in the sense that for us, it was shortly after you and I got together in Griffith Park.
Yes.
It was, I think, a couple of weeks after that we found out, and he had a diagnosis, and um, he was almost done with treatment. And this was in this last March that he passed, but he had two forms of cancer. He had lymphoma as well as lung cancer, and the lymphoma was gone. They had eradicated it, and
Yeah.
then it snuck its way back, which is something that happens, and went through the spine and ultimate manifested as brain cancer like quickly. So by the time we found out, and by the time he was hospitalized, and he was in hospitalized in a where is it? Scottsdale, Arizona. So
Okay.
my siblings and I were like on the next flight out and basically had his last 3 days. And we sort of had his last moments of lucidity, although it was this shock of all of a sudden seeing someone who looked like they had brain damage,
Yeah.
kind of hard to
Yeah.
pick out his words. Um,
Yeah.
and then he was on life support pretty shortly after. And so it was a few days of just a lot of affection. We were
Yeah.
just all kind of surrounding him and each other and holding hands. And um, there was this one sweet moment because we kind of had to go in shifts because he was in.
Yes.
And my younger brother and I had like a night shift with him, and my dad was like an IPA guy.
Yeah.
And so my little brother like snuck out and, snuck some beers and coffee cups and, just had those kinds of moments
Exactly.
I'll cherish
Yeah.
forever. But I kind of am curious too, was your dad also a musician?
Yes, he was. Yeah.
Was his relationship to music?
Um, he was born on July 21st, which is the Day of Music in France, if not the entirety of Europe. I don't know. In France, it's known as the Day of Music, and he was always very inclined. I think he was very fascinated by British rock and American rock, and he loved guitar, and he was a guitarist and songwriter. His mother never really encouraged it, but at some point he kind of semi broke out of her discouragement of music. The truth was that she always wanted to do music as well, and was discouraged from that by her mother. She had a gorgeous voice, my grandmother. And I actually have a recording of the last recording I have of her is her telling me I'm in her apartment saying goodbye, and she's telling me don't stop whatever you do, don't stop music, just do it. The people will tell you, essentially she's apologizing for not allowing my father to have done it. Yes, he was a musician, very like technically brained musician. He loved the science and math of music, and would always try to torture my sister and I with long discourses on the things that fascinated him about harmony and theory, and but he was also a computer programmer, which is what his day job was, and so he would work for tech companies and do that side of things. But then he would also like his passion work was making software about music theory. Um, yeah, so he ended up having a sort of very specific and different focus in music than I did. But when my mother and he first met, they wrote a number of songs together, and they're very beautiful. But then I suppose they just kind of dropped that and moved on to maybe just being parents. We always connected through music, and
So was
uh,
that something that he kind of brought to you guys, like we're doing music lessons, or was it just kind of always around?
it was always around. It was always very, very loud. There was constant loud music in the house, but like 70s French music, which was very fun. And the music lessons, I don't think there wasn't a choice. The choice was what instrument you play. And I suppose my rebellion was to not do guitar for as long as I could. Um, and it was only when he died that I inherited all his guitars and have started to play. Yeah. I always took music lessons, but even then I was a little, I had a teacher and I didn't practice at all. And then my teacher died kind of very quickly of cancer. Um, and I had one last lesson with him and he was essentially green. He was so sick and I felt so bad for never having practiced that I really kind of dove into it. I must have been like 11-ish. Um, yeah, my kid brain was just like, I was a horrible student and now he's dying and I have to make up for it somehow. And I really dove into piano more then and then started writing songs. And once I started writing songs, I never looked back from music at all. It was just, there's never been a moment at which have said to myself, oh, maybe I'll stop for a couple months and see what else is out there. There just isn't really a question um, in my mind or heart. And I think my dad felt that way about music too. Um, and he loved to show me songs and it was always from this very paternal perspective where he would be teaching me something. I think it would have come to a point where he would realize that there wasn't much to teach necessarily, but he'd still love to share. Like as he was dying, one of the last songs he asked me to learn, he would just ask me to learn a song, and then he would want me to learn it. Wouldn't even necessarily need me to perform it for him or anything, but was Wichita Lineman. Do you
I
know
love
that?
that.
I love that song too, and and
Do
that
you
was the
want to
last one.
launch you? It's like such a great lyric.
Yeah, exactly.
Did you play that on guitar or piano when you
I
were young?
played that on the piano. Yeah. He was too sick. I had just moved into this apartment. He was too sick to come and hear me play it, but my mom filmed it for him and showed it to him. We had a funny relationship about music. I truly don't think that he could tell you the name of one of my songs. He always listened, but from a distance. I think it was really emotional for him, not in a sort of envy way or anything like that, but I think it was more emotional than he would want to say. So he listened from a distance and was always very proud. He would certainly come to shows, and something I miss a lot is his debrief, like the call the next day. He would always want to call and talk about, okay, your bassist was doing this. I loved that. The sound guy could have, I wish he could come to a show nowadays because it's so much more dialed than it was at that time. Again, he died before I even put the first record out. So that first record had to really, it was so much about him and um, inspired by what he wanted me to do. And the other interesting factor was that the man who produced it, named Henry Wolf, he became a father as that record was being made. There was just many lines of fatherhood. As I lost one, he became one, and then became one again, doubly so by having another child. Um, there was a very paternal energy in that, and I didn't have a car when I was making that record, and I did have a Vespa. My dad was a motorcycle rider, and there were always motorcycles and Vespas at the house, and so I just had one of those that I was borrowing from my parents, and I live in Miracle Mile, which is like mid-city-ish, and Henry, where we made the record, was in Pasadena, and I would ride back and forth daily that summer while making the record on the Vespa throughout Los Angeles, and I was wearing my dad's helmet. He was passed away at this point already, and it was a closed helmet. It was really nice to be like in the LA sun. I was being bad, and I was wearing like no protective clothing, just short shorts and a t-shirt and this big helmet. Um, and I could cry and smile as much as I wanted, and no one could see me from inside this dark helmet. He felt very present for the
Mhm.
making of that whole record.
Which makes me want to talk about like any experiences with your dad after death, at least in ways that he's shown up. So my father was also a musician. He was a bass player and had bands since he was a teen, but he had a three-piece while I was growing up. And they
Wow.
had their own original songs, but they also would like cover the Beatles at their shows and Tom Petty. Um, they played the Whiskey a Go-Go a lot. And so
Fun.
my childhood was very much in that world. And it was like our favorite thing. The weekends were often spent at least kid, friendly shows and eating fries and drinking cherry cokes. And I did the video for his service,
Yeah.
and I chose four songs, and there was kind of four parts to it. And the first portion was sort of chronological from like baby photos to him becoming a grandfather. And the song I chose for that was Let Me Roll It by Paul McCartney.
Yeah.
And there was a moment though, like before, right before my dad's diagnosis, where he and I were together making food and listening to music, and he put that song on, and I kind of caught like a glimpse of him like air basing and like singing along. It's just this like sweet moment. And so after he passed, I'm working on this video for the service, and for probably several days at this point of just listening to this song all day, all night. And I was driving to meet a girlfriend in Malibu and was recalling a story that my dad had told me where when he was young, he had this vintage truck that you had to like crank start. And he would drive through the canyon to go body surfing in Malibu. And he was saying how like the surfers like all loved him and his truck, kind of a thing.
Yeah.
Just this like this memory that I was thinking about. And then all of a sudden, this car next to me like swerves, its tire flies off and clears, like it's in one of those beach parking lots, but there's no cars. And so it's just rolling alongside me for maybe 15 seconds. And all I could think of was, I mean, if anyone doesn't know the Let Me Roll It song, the lyric is literally, I can't tell you how I feel. My heart is like a wheel. Let me roll it to you.
Yeah.
And I don't care what anyone thinks or believes, but in that moment, I was just so in it and just felt like we don't even can't even have like a sliver of understanding of I think the orchestration of things and how
Yeah.
big it is sometimes, even when it's something that might be conceivably so small or looked over by somebody. Like it was just things like that that I feel or that I know that keep happening that have been I don't know, just incredibly moving, and it makes me feel, closer to him, and also makes me just really like ponder even more than I had prior,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
anyway.
I love that story. That's an amazing story. And I also love your allusion to the grander orchestration and that feeling, or even you said, I don't care what anybody thinks. Like, I don't even care what I think about that. That part is not my business. The grandness of it, the above aspect of it is, I perceive that as not my business. It's not even something that I give thought to, but I certainly give thought to what I'm being presented. Therefore, in your case, the wheel. I love that. One thing that I noticed, and I may have already spoken to you about this, but just sort of a lesson in perspective or lens or the circumstance of someone being alive and someone being your father. Like I just saw him as my dad. As when he was my dad, he was just that person is my dad. When he died, I would like it exploded into I saw the child, the man before marriage, the man in early marriage, and I also saw past the expectancy that he happened to have had. I saw him as the older man. I just saw the entirety of him in this way that like my his child brain didn't really perceive. I just saw dad when I looked at him, but now I can see so much more of him, the whole story and beyond, um, which is a vantage point that I really appreciate. I don't know if you have, or if you even perceived him that way, maybe when he was alive, but
Felt like what I experienced towards the end was I had this feeling that I don't think we ever feel like we age or get old.
yeah,
I still saw a lot of like innocence in him. And I think especially because being confronted with death when it's actually happening, I think, he was scared and there was a lot of fear there.
yeah,
And in some ways, it's kind of off topic of what you're bringing up, but like in some ways, I wonder like how. if I was really there as much as I could have been in sitting with him in that, where I think
Yeah.
we all kind of had, like wanted the treatment to work and were
Yes.
really keeping it positive and real. But I think I was more just offering, hopefully, some calm and peace. But I think really when I think about it, how intense, that's not even a good word to describe it, but when you're really in it, which is again something that we'll all face, but when it's happening, anyway, but I think that
Yeah, I don't think I was able to go as deep as I would have wanted to. I don't even, maybe we're just not equipped to do that in the moment.
yeah, not equipped, not experienced, not, I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah,
it's,
maybe next time, or the next time. Uh
yeah, like
yeah,
how would you want to be, how would you want to feel in the, I don't know. I think no matter what, it probably is, it's a solo.
yeah. Yes, that too. There was a point at which really towards the end we weren't there anymore. It was harder and harder to break through as he got closer to death.
Hmm.
And very few, and he could only break through for a couple moments. Um yeah. I was going to ask you, we're speaking a lot about our fathers. What about, like, as you join this club of having a dead parent, um, what's the toll to be in this club? I noticed, I feel like there's something in my face, so specific, but there's something in my face that I haven't been able to find since he did, like something disappeared, um, or was gained. I don't know, but I feel like I physically changed, and I don't know if it's just stress, but I don't know. Something is gone. There's a sort of innocence or ease in life when both your parents are just there, and you haven't felt that loss. I feel like it marks physically. Of course, it marks mentally, but have you found that at all?
What I feel hasn't been so much a physical one, but I do feel that I've gained more wisdom and there's less of an illusion, I think, about
Yes.
the world. And so, if anything, maybe what has happened is there's less of a facade,
Yeah.
any kind of mask. I don't know. But it does feel, having experienced it, because when we go through these things and you come out the other side hopefully with some grace, that it is heart opening, and I think it's softened me even more.
Yeah.
But just kind of being out and about, I think I have a more openness, and that people are maybe responding to that,
Yeah.
hopefully in a way that I feel like a safe, person.
Yeah.
But do you have any sort of feeling on what it might be for you?
I think I definitely gain. I mean, you kind of gain this phone line to death or the other side, or you have more of a concept of where that is, not necessarily geographically, but just emotionally. Um, and maybe people can perceive that.
I'm curious because I kind of want to get back into some of the music too. And so you wrote Morpheus while this was happening, while your father was on. And so where was this? Was it you were in a house? You were,
This is in my childhood home in Orange County, so 45 minutes south of Los Angeles in Mission Viejo. My boss, when I told her that I had to leave work and go down and kind of be with my dad as he died, I feel like she didn't know what to do for me. She just kind of randomly said, "Do you want a harpsichord?" Some completely out of the left field thing to say, or to offer at this time. So on the way down to Orange County, the logic of my kind of escapes me now, but why did I do this? But I went to her house and picked up a harpsichord and brought it to Orange County and set it up at the bottom of the stairs. It was rather heavy, and he was in his room at the top of the stairs. And so this harpsichord was just kind of there in the middle of the house. And I wrote both Pierre Jean and Morpheus on that harpsichord downstairs. And so he heard both of those songs as they were being written. Especially that, oh, this isn't on, but that Morpheus riff at the beginning. But all of it, yeah, he would have it would have entered his ears at least.
Oh,
So those were both written there on that harpsichord. The harpsichord wasn't recorded onto the record. It was too out of tune and too heavy to move and stuff. But the genesis of both those songs happened right there in that house and with him upstairs.
that's incredible. There's a beautiful scale that happens on Pierre Jean that I love. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, so I mean, maybe we can just segue into current writing and this new record
Absolutely.
that you're working on
Yeah.
and how it's differed. You shared a little bit about some of the inspiration.
This one, I feel like you might have been alluding to this, but that first record, the one you listened to, called The Welder, was all written before I really played shows live in LA.
Right. And
And
I remember you told me, I don't want to cut you off, but I do remember you told me that like you weren't going to put out a record until you knew exactly like how it was going to sound, like all, all the parts needed to, all the
yeah,
pieces.
and one of the major pieces was the audience reaction. Um, that was not a concern in the writing of the songs for the first record, The Welder. Wasn't even a possibility again because I wasn't playing out. But that record and Henry's help in making it and helping me find a community in music in LA allowed me to then begin to play out a lot. I play
Mhm.
out at least once a month. And I started playing new songs and gauging the reaction to those songs, seeing which ones just always worked, um, and speaking to people after about their impressions of the songs. And again, the way someone reacts the first time they hear a song live is not the only barometer for a good song, but it is a barometer. And that's how I chose the songs for the next record. It was songs that moved people, excited people, um, drew some type of energy immediately. I love like one of my favorite records in the world is Hijira, and had to listen to it like 6 times before I even cared about it. Someone in my life told me that it was really special, and I listened to it, and I didn't get it. So there are songs that take a long time to sink in, and I love that kind of music. But for this next record, I wanted a sort of immediacy, and playing all of these songs that are on the next record live allowed me to really gauge that and choose which ones were going to be chosen. And we then recorded them live at Jonathan Rado's home studio. He's producing this next record, and then we're doing a few overdubs, some vocal overdubs and such. We've got 2 more days of that, and then the record will be done.
I love that you're doing it live. Are you doing it to tape?
It was all on tape, yeah, yeah.
Mhm. It has its own energy to it that I love. And I remember when I was at your record release show, there was this moment where that you had said that you're like, I love my life. And you're like, I love doing this. Like, and
Yeah.
are you still feeling that way currently? Are you still in this?
Absolutely. I love my life so much. There's this aligning of impatience because I want this next record out, and I feel very strongly about the energy that it will attract and the amount of energy that it'll attract. So um the impatience doesn't make me love my life any less, but there is that. It's just kind of hovering right now. But I love it. I love living in Los Angeles. I love writing music and recording music, and I feel that the more I put out, the more I attract, and I am working with people who I just respect so much. Um, yeah, I love it.
Have like, do you think before that and before you started actively, putting out your music and playing out and stuff, can you think back on was there a way that you were holding yourself back? Or do you think it just wasn't the time?
Totally. I think I was ready to jump out and then COVID happened. Um, but I don't know. I didn't know how. I'm very there's so much that I'm able to create and build myself. I'm the inner world is completely built out and I will always continue to build it out and that's all I care about and work on. I'm not as good at taking the outer world and saying, I want this here, so I'm going to move it. That kind of fascinates me when people can do that. I suppose I get better at it, but it's not my strong suit. My strong suit is what's inside, and inside, my home and my marriage, and I'm sort of meticulous about all that is around me. Um, but manipulating, and it is a sort of manipulation of the outer world. It's not negative necessarily, but I could stand to get better at that. But as I show my inner world more openly, there are people who are willing to step in, Henry, other people, um, to manipulate the outer world for me and make things happen. Um, but I could still stand, like with this next record, I'm going to push harder. I know how magic it is. I know what it's worth, and I'm going to try my hand at being a little more, I want this here, and really ask for things and ask for favors. I'm not so good at that. But
Mhm.
but then when I do it, it scares me. It scares me. Because of the potential no or the potential. But when I do it, I find that people are extremely excited to help, and I just have to get over that.
Yeah. It is kind of yeah, just a thing that you put into practice,
Yeah.
like most things. And yeah, because everyone kind of has their roles, you know. So if there's something that someone's able to do and fulfill, then that's when the sort of beautiful harmony
And
begins.
it's funny, there are already people this time because I put out the first record. It's also just this growing thing, and I don't want to push it. I like things to happen naturally because there has sort of been this magic of things always happening naturally. It just always feels as though it flows exactly where it needs to. I don't. I do want to count on that. I don't want to count on that forever because it's also the onus is on me to make something happen. But also,
But
I
that's
really like counting on that.
it's the mystery and the magic that I love and
Yeah,
requires the showing up, putting something out without any expectation of where it even might land. You
yeah,
can have an idea,
yeah,
but anything in my life that I've been able to, I think in my younger years especially, there was some hubris there. So I think I was able to manipulate or manifest certain things, pretty specific, but it's never actually the thing that you want, or it's so fleeting anyway. And
yeah,
I'm more into this practice now in all aspects of life of just, yeah, showing up, putting something out, less rigidity, and
yeah,
being so excited about knowing something's going to come through, but I never
yeah,
know in what form or where or when. And so it is kind of this really, it is that co-creation that people talk about. It's that dance of, you know, taking one step forward and then something meets you. Otherwise, life would be so boring if
yeah,
we could
yeah.
honestly write the whole script.
It's
Like,
like playing The Sims with the cheat codes. It loses its fun really fast. Oh, I just bought the most expensive thing in The Sims, and now what? Um, but I am overall just extremely excited. It's
does does Hollywood have a place in this?
Hollywood as l less so. Yeah, no, I love Hollywood so much. I'm there's so much more that I want to write for LA. Um, I mean, I'm always listening to You Must Remember This, Karina Longworth podcast about old Hollywood. Right now I'm watching a Carol Lombard film called what is it called? There's a Ali Buckley song of the same title, Nothing Sacred. Um, And again, the songs just feel really good live and have this immediate energy that when you then add a band and put it onto tape, it's really captured. There's an aspect to the Welder record, again, so paternal. And one of my desires with my father always was to prove, he's always talking about music theory and harmony and the intricacy of it and all of that. And why this specific song is so cool. And I just wanted to prove so badly because again, there was that sort of withholding on his end where he could never tell you the name of one of my songs or he would listen, of course, but he there was a division that he I think emotionally had to make. So in that record, I think there's a lot of me like trying to prove how much I know and to make the most intricate or interesting choice, which led to some very cool things. But I'm not so concerned with that in this next record. If a song like The Beach essentially stays on two chords for the entirety of the song, I'm not worried about that. I don't need my dad's opinion on that for this record. Was that did I answer your question?
Yeah, absolutely. And because I was wondering, because I also part of diving into your world, I watched the Betty Davis interview that inspired the song Betty, which was such a delight. Love that era of interviews. I watch.
You. I wish something like that existed.
Well, there was just such less. There's something about that era, I think, because we weren't so constantly used to seeing ourselves or knowing that something was going to be recorded, or I don't
Yes.
know, that there was less of a filter on people.
It's in the Dick Cavett, Katharine Hepburn. Interesting because she comes in and she said to Dick Cavett, "I'll only do your show if we do a rehearsal. I don't want there to be an audience, no audience, and I want to rehearse, and I just want to see what the space is like." So she comes in, not dressed fancy at all, just kind of hair up, very Hepburn, over shirts and pants and sandals, and she says, "Move this table, and I want this here," and she's being bratty, and then she says, "Why don't we just do it now? Let's just
Mhm.
do it now. I'm here." And so they weren't prepared at all to do that. There's no one in the audience, which is what she wanted. And she talked for 2 hours and they split it into two shows. It's very interesting and very, you know, these are not people who are thinking about being perceived by a camera or anything. Of course, they knew how to do that. They knew exactly how to be perceived by a camera, but it's not what they were doing in the context of an interview.
Yeah.
So that was really cool to watch too. And I want to write a song about her. I want to write a song about everyone. I love communing with dead people. That is a big part of music for me. Dead people that I know, that I don't know, dead people that I don't even have a necessarily like a perception of who they were. I just love the past.
Mhm.
Um, it's so rich. One of the things that my dad said, which really connected me to him, is that he was excited to join the rank of the dead. And that sounds like a zombie movie, but he was excited to be one of the billions of people who are now dead. Well, that's a club too, you know? There are way more of them in that club than there are in this club, you know? It's huge. And to be amongst so many glorious people, people we know about, people we don't know about, history lost to history, these fantastic people. Just an amazing mother who is hilarious, or Mozart, or what, all of that. It made me happy to hear him say that because I think about that so much too, and I write about that, and it's yeah, so much of my music is and my life, so much of my present is about the past that belongs to me, belongs to actors, actresses that I love, and people that I don't even know.
I imagine you felt this way always, but was there a specific time in life that you kind of knew that was, or had, yeah, I don't know, any sort of experience that made you kind of open up to it more?
I feel like it was always that way. My mother has a little cheetah print fuzzy book. I don't know why that was the one that was chosen, but it's just a little spiral notebook where she would just write down very strange things that I would say as a child. Of course, nothing is coming to mind, but in elementary school at recess, there was a tree that I always wanted to just stand in front of and talk to instead of playing with other kids. And I um I always felt I'm still learning more and more about what this thing that I have always felt can, in what ways it can actually be used. Um, and music seems to be the most interesting way for me to do something with it. And music is this medium that essentially requires nothing. I mean, film is so fascinating and I love it. And it requires so much to make a film. So many people, so I can make music alone that is as impactful as a film that takes, hundreds of people to create. Um, Again, there's like an immediacy to music, and people feel it immediately. You can feel all the emotion again that you would feel in a 2-hour film in 3 minutes in a song or less. You feel it immediately just from the beginning riff. Um, th- there's something so transcendent about music. So I was obsessed with magic as a child. Was just it was all I thought about, and any media that spoke of magic, I fixated on so heavily. Practical Magic, Charmed, Harry Potter, Hocus Pocus. Those are all from different ages. But I was really dismayed when people in my world started telling me that magic wasn't real. It made me extremely sad. Um, but I quickly learned that my music is my magic and my songs are my spells. And I've been saying that to myself since I was like 13. So um, I, I feel very powerful within the realm of my music, and I can kind of go anywhere I want. I suppose that's why I love my life. I can kind of do whatever I want within this context, and I've made it so that this context is the entirety of my life. Um,
Yeah, there's no separation between. How could there be? Yeah.
yeah.
Man, I'm like, no, we just got into talking about magic and childhood. No, I mean, we can do it again, I hope. But
Absolutely.
I'm looking at our time. And anyway, I so appreciate you. And I'm so glad that your soul exists. And so excited to hear the new record and however I can support even this next record, even just as a friend, or if there's something that, yeah, that comes to mind that I can offer up, just let me know.
Thank you so much. I love talking with you. I'm so glad that you reached out to do this. We have so much in common. Um,
Yeah.
it's really fascinating. And we've overlapped just a few times, but it feels so right.
Yeah, just like-minded souls. All right, friend, thanks
Oh,
again.
thank you.